I'm so glad to be here again with you all. I'm Julia Flynn Seiler. Friends here call me Julie. Thank you. So please call me Julie. So I'm here to introduce 6 writers who make us so proud. The community of writers has a really remarkable history of helping to launch great writers at the start of their careers, including Pulitzer Prize winners Jason Roberts, you've gotten to know him, woohoo! Jason, and Michael Chabon, as well, of course, our beloved National Humanities Medal winner, Amy Tan. Yeah, who workshopped a portion of the Joy Luck Club here many, many years ago. And we're so grateful to Amy. This evening we have a great group of writers who were workshop participants, just like many of you. And their books are all for sale in the tiny house. I'm expecting you all to make your way there after this reading, and I know they'd be happy to sign those books for you. I also wanted to mention someone who could not be here with us tonight. Her name is Pam Rourke Levy, and she was a participant in 2018 and came again in 2019, and whose book, Return to Blue Water, was posthumously published this year. San Francisco-born, Pam was an award-winning film and television writer, producer, and director. She also served as the Art Institute of San Francisco's chairman, so some of you may know her that way. She was an extraordinarily warm, deeply loved person and a very gifted storyteller, and we miss her dearly. And our first author tonight, Jean Carstensen, bonded with Pam in workshop number 9, their first year together. And Jean will share a few memories of Pam. But first I'll introduce Jean to you. So Jean came to the conference in 2018 as a participant in the nonfiction program where she worked with Jason Roberts and Regan Arthur. The book was sold on proposal in 2019, and her book was published by One Signal, Simon & Schuster, in March of 2025, and it came out in paperback this April. A Greek tragedy, One Day, a Deadly Shipwreck, and the Human Cost of the Refugee Crisis was a finalist for the Penn Galbraith Award for Nonfiction and the LA Times Book Prize. It was awarded the California Book Awards Silver Medal. So, here's Jean.
Oh, it's really emotional to be here. Thank you all for coming, and I can't wait to hear the other readers. I do want to say I was in workshop nonfiction, we called it nonfiction number 9, because we had a really good time and we had quite a bond, and I really wish Pam Rourke Levy could be here with us tonight, reading from her book, Return to Blue Water. It was about the Dorade, a 1929 sailing ship that she and her husband restored, and in the process restored their marriage. And compared to what I brought to the workshop, let me tell you, it was in much better shape. And Pam, I wish you were here to be reading from that book tonight. I'm going to read, some of you may have heard last night, I read a little bit. This is from a section of the book during the shipwreck, and now it's gone on for 4 hours. And there's the end of the rescue. It's dark, it's very stormy, and they're trying to pick up the last people. And there was one Syrian man in the water that they had a tremendously hard time trying to rescue because he weighed so much, he was so big. And he's one of the main people you'll get to know if you read this book. And this is the section about his struggle to survive. And you'll hear what happens. As night fell, a Coast Guard helicopter beamed a spotlight across the surface of the water in search of people who still needed rescue by the lifeguards or a patrol boat, or dead bodies they had missed. The yellow light gleamed on Okpa's glassy, bloodshot eyes. He screamed as loud as he could, trying to make himself heard over the roar of the rotors above his head. "Help me! Allah, save me!" The pilot knew he was there, as did the other rescuers. The sun had set more than an hour ago. The full moon tinged the foamy black waves with silver. Except for the helicopter beam and the faint glow from the fishing boats, he was in darkness. After 4 hours, Okpa was depleted. As a young man, he had soared through the dusty blue skies of Syria with a parachute. Now he would plunge to the bottom of the Aegean. He felt himself going down. Numb from head to toe, he couldn't fight any longer. He asked Allah for forgiveness for all the mistakes he'd made in his life. Up on the deck of the Captain Yorgos, a 40-foot fishing trawler, Ismail El-Hamisi heard Okpa screaming in Arabic, "Save me, save me." Ismail, an Egyptian who worked part of the year in Greece, had watched 2 lifeguards try and fail to get Okpa onto the back of their jet ski. Now Okpa had drifted near to the hull of the Captain Yorgos. His cries for help bellowed across the water. The stout trawler had a V-shaped hull and a high freeboard with no ladder. The only way Ismail and the rest of the crew, 3 Greeks and 4 Egyptians, could possibly reach Okpa was to wait for the swell to carry him up. "Don't give up," the men yelled down. When a wave smashed against the hull, pushing Okpa along with it, 2 fishermen managed to grab his arms, one his left, the other his right, while Ishmael and other fishermen held onto their belts from behind to keep them from falling overboard. 1, 2, 3, they heaved. Okpa's head, neck, and bed-frame-sized shoulders rose up out of the water. With their feet wedged up against the inside of the hull, they heaved again. But the poundage was too much, and Okpa slipped from their grip. He disappeared under the water. It was a few seconds before his face reappeared, choking and crying, "I'm going to drown." Ishmael's brown eyes, already burning with sweat and the salt spray that whipped them constantly, swelled with tears. Again and again they tried to save Okpa. They tried in different configurations, sometimes with the biggest guys out front, sometimes with Ishmael and the smaller men reaching down with support from behind. At 5'7" and 150 pounds, Ishmael weighed less than 1/3 of the man they were trying to haul in. The men cried out loud each time they dropped him, knowing that he couldn't survive this battering much longer. "Nico, El Gordo is still there," Oscar said to Nico. The helicopter rotors thracked above, throwing up spray as it directed its beam onto the huge man they had tried to save so many times before. He was getting pounded by the waves in the vicinity of a fishing trawler, one of the last people left in the water. "Oscar, we can't go," Nico replied from the back of the jet ski. They'd been running the jet skis full bore for 4 hours. The gas would sputter to empty any minute now. "We have to go." "Grab him," Oscar insisted once again. Nico crawled back onto the sled, knelt down, and reached for Okpa. Nico knew it was impossible to pull him up. With his heels digging into the sled, he grabbed onto the neck of Okpa's tracksuit as Oscar inched the jet ski toward the trawler. Now Okpa was right next to the hull. Up on deck, 5 or 6 fishermen waved and yelled in Greek and Arabic. The Spaniards didn't understand. They didn't know that the men had already spent an hour trying and failing to pull Okpa up over the gunwale. Somehow in the screaming and frantic gesturing between the fishermen up on deck and Oscar and Nico down on the jet ski, a new idea emerged. Use the equipment for hauling in heavy nets full of fish to haul in Okpa. Starboard, 20 feet above where Okpa was treading water next to the jet ski, a crisscross of rigging, White and red metal poles attached to cables, ropes, and pulleys dangled in the air. Ishmael grabbed the key for the winch hanging inside the captain's bridge and stood at the controls amid a morass of cranks, pulleys, spools, and cables. The engine rumbled awake. As he worked two long levers, a series of spools bolted to the deck, groaned and squeaked as they turned. The fisherman reached out for the rope as it descended from the end of the winch, guiding it down to the surface of the water. Oscar fought to keep the jet ski steady in the waves next to the hull of the massive trawler. One hit, and the fiberglass machine could be smashed to pieces. Balancing on back, Nico grasped the rope. When he had enough length to work with, he looped it behind Okba's back in the water, threaded it under his arms, and tied a knot at his stomach. Then they left. The fisherman yelled down to Okba to hold on. Okba's limbs felt like dead stumps, but he managed to reach up his arms and grasp the rope. The engine thunked. The rope pulled tight. The winch strained against its 470-pound payload. This is nonfiction. Pushing the system to capacity. Leaning out over the gunwale, the fisherman saw the top of Okba's head rise out of the water, then his shoulders, his chest. Water streamed down to his neck and Adidas tracksuit. "Stop, stop!" Okba screamed in Arabic. "It's cutting me." The rope held, but the higher he rose, the deeper it sliced into his flesh. They released the rope and it went slack. Okba was in free fall. When he resurfaced, he sputtered and choked out water, crying over and over that it was time for him to die. The fishermen peered down at him in anguish. Their tears blew sideways in the wind. The crew pulled up the rope and lowered it again. This time, someone had tied a large loop at the end, like a swing. "Put your legs through," they yelled. "I can't. You can." The force of the waves knocked Okba sideways as he tried to bring his knees to his chest. He swallowed more water, surfaced, went down again. Feeling for the loop and his hand, he managed to put his legs through. He felt the rope pull tight against his backside. Ishmael pushed the levers down to engage the gears. Inch by inch, the rope tightened around the spools. The rigging strained as Okba's body rose up out of the sea. The water level was around his neck, then his waist, then his knees. The fisherman yelled out encouragement, "You're almost there," and prayed that the winch would hold. When his feet dangled 6 feet above the water, they reached out to secure their catch, grabbing onto his tracksuit and the rope to pull him over the gunwale and onto the deck. "Welcome, you are safe now, inshallah," Ishmael said. Ishmael and the other Egyptian fishermen said to him. Okba thanked them over and over and asked for water and sugar for his diabetes. They brought him a piece of candy and covered him with a blanket. When they tried to take off his wetsuit, he wouldn't let them. He had zipped all the cash into one of his pockets. Then he passed out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. Wow. Nonfiction. Next, we have Vishwas Gaitonde. Vishwas spent his formative years in India, has lived in England, and now resides in the United States. His fiction, nonfiction, and journalism have appeared widely in Pleiades, Santa Monica Review, and Descount, among many others. His distinctions include 2 writing residencies at the Anderson Center for Interdisciplinary Studies in Minnesota and 2 fellowships at the Hawthornden Castle International Writers Retreat in Scotland. He was included in the special 5/50 feature in the November 2025 Poets and Writers issue. He attended the conference in 2014 and again in 2022, working with Michael Haim Becerra, Leyland Chuk, Oscar Villon, and David Owen, and received a Mott Scholarship. His short story collection, On Earth as It Is in Heaven, from which you will read today, won the 2023 Orison Fiction Prize and was longlisted for the 2026 Penn Bingham Prize for debut short story collection. Please welcome Vishwas.
Merci beaucoup, Julia, for that kind introduction. And top of the evening to all of you. If you read the Omnium Gatherum regularly, and I hope you do, you will know just how many alums of this conference have gone on to publish books. And out of all of those distinguished writers, to be invited here to give a reading is a tremendous honor. So thank you, Brett, Lisa, and the rest of the team. The title story of my collection was first published in 2016 in the Santa Monica Review. So thank you, Andrew Tonkovich, for all your support down the years. On earth as it is in heaven. We know the phrase from the Lord's Prayer, and so a lot of people think that this is a religious book. It isn't. Sure, there are spiritual dimensions to many of the stories, but it isn't religious in the sense that we usually use the term. Why then this title? The 11 stories in this book are set in different places on our earth. And the one thing common to the people in all the stories is they want to reach out, grab a slice of heaven, thinking that that would brighten up their patch of earth. In these pages, you will meet Americans and Moroccans, British and Pakistanis, Indians and New Zealanders and Sri Lankans, all in the quest for paradise. I'll read you a short excerpt from one of the stories. It's called The Peacock's Cry. Flora Dickerson is a middle-aged American lady who has just inherited an antique gold box from India from her deceased grandfather. And she makes a journey to India to meet two antiquarian dealers, Vishwanathan and Atmanathan, who know something about this mysterious box. Your grandpa's box, it was more than just an item from that era. Vishwanathan spoke from first-hand knowledge. Did you ever turn the box over? Anything carved on the base? Flora had often wondered what the creature was. She had many looks at the box when her grandfather had flipped it over when they were playing games. Was it dragon or dinosaur? Or was it the beast her grandfather had sighted by pure happenstance during his wandering, the Loch Ness Monster? It was a fish. Atmanathan paused after his pronouncement, struggling for his next sentence. But only one word shot out of his mouth and slammed into her eardrums with the force of a cannonball. Aurangzeb! Excuse me? Aurangzeb, the last of the mighty Mughal emperors. This box belonged to him. Flora felt a tinge of shame. She had no idea whom Atmanathan talked about, although he had expected her to know. He sensed her discomfiture. You know the Taj Mahal, right? Built by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan for his wife Mumtaz. She died in childbirth, left Shah Jahan devastated, shattered. and as determined as hell to build her the most beautiful mausoleum the world had ever seen. And he did it, the Taj Mahal. Aurangzeb was the son of Shah Jahan and Mumtaz. And this box, it belonged to the emperor something Zeb? Well, the fish was one of the royal insignias of the Emperor Aurangzeb, or Zeb as you call him. Zeb's armies held the fish standard high in the air when they marched into the kingdoms they conquered. Golconda, Cooch Behar, Bijapur. The fish carving indicates the box was used in the palace, possibly in the emperor's bedchambers or in the rooms of the harem. In either case, your box scores well over others crafted in that time. So, it's valuable? Oh, extremely. Let me give you some idea. A dagger from the late Mughal period was recently auctioned at Christie's. The hilt was made of fine jade, the scabbard encrusted with emeralds, estimated to sell at $35,000, sold for $117,000. Flora gasped, her second wow of the evening. In most cases, it isn't just the intrinsic value of the object. There are so many intangibles at play. Aurangzeb was the last of the great Mughals. His successors were weak. By then, the British had arrived in India, set up commercial trading posts, and were hell-bent on gaining territory. You see, it was a tumultuous period in India's history, in world history. The Mughal Empire was crumbling. The British Empire was rising. One desperately trying to hold on to power, the other determined to seize that power. Any artifact from this era is valuable. And one that belonged to the emperor? Atmanadan's voice tailed off. Invaluable, right? Said Flora. Mrs. Dickerson? Mrs. Dickerson, people have killed and will kill over and over again to get hold of the box that you have in your possession. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vishwas. Thank you. Our next reader is Annelise Hotchase, who attended the conference just last year, working with Vanessa Wah and Samir Pandya. She holds a PhD in creative writing from the University of Missouri and an MFA in fiction from the University of Nevada, Reno, where she currently works as a teaching assistant professor. Her stories have been shortlisted for the Neil Shepard Prize in Fiction and the Kurt Johnson Prize. Her work has also appeared in journals including Wigleaf, Juked, Bull, Tahoma Literary Review, and Type House, amongst others. Annelise is the author of the short story collection Matter Out of Place, recently published by the University of Nevada Press. Please welcome Annelise.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I really enjoyed my experience last summer, and the group that I met with, where's JJ? What name did they land on? Grade 8? Did we punch that up at all? No? Okay, grade 8. But they still get together. I had to bow out in the spring because of my summer teaching schedule, but yeah, I'm excited to rejoin. So I'm going to be reading from the opening story. It's titled Andromeda. It's a formally experimental story, so it takes the form of traditional narrative in the beginning, but then the excerpt I'm going to read from is a homework assignment from a college student, and this is a fictionalized account of my own experience going on a field trip to a brothel. So we have that, and then little more narrative and the professor's response. Sydney Jarrett, Anya Ludley, PhD, HDFS 4500, 3 March 2010. Sexual history narrative. When I got my first period, I thought I was dying. I wrote up a will and everything, shoved all the bloodied underwear into the back of my dresser until it took on a metallic smell. Then I changed tactics. I rolled them into fist-sized balls to fit into the fist-sized hole left by my dad in my closet's drywall. Our school had abstinence-only sex ed, a strange program that oscillated between graphic depictions of wart-laden genitalia and activities so steeped in metaphor, it was hard to parse which parts were about sex. In one, you wrote your name inside a series of concentric circles. Circles are the strongest shape, outlining all of the people who will be there for you if nefarious forces threaten your commitment to abstinence. I wasn't allowed to take sex ed until it was required in high school. In 7th grade, the transfer student David and I would get pulled out and have to complete worksheets from classes we weren't enrolled in. I'd already learned about sex from my neighbor's stash of VHS pornos, a fact I'd never share with my parents. The act seemed beastly, with cartoonishly loud moans, jerky motions, and fluids, to say nothing of the hair pulling and slapping. It seemed terrifying. For a time, I panicked whenever I heard a knock on the door. Like the man in the first video I watched, I worried one would say he was coming to fix the cable and would end up bending my mom over and pressing her face against the cold tile of our kitchen counter. In 8th grade, I spent an entire week learning about volcanoes when I was pulled out of sex ed that year. When I got to the part about the tectonic plates rubbing up against each other, the eruption, the hot magma spilling out, my cheeks burned, my mouth dry as ash. I understood the basics out of middle school, but it wouldn't be until much later that I experienced it for myself. Even here, in an assignment that will be read only by my professor, who's read hundreds of these before, I still have trouble writing about my experience. But here it is. I had sex for the first time last week. Who the guy was is irrelevant. I didn't know him before, and I don't plan to know him after. He was good looking in the way that a model home is appealing. Uniform, predictable, nondescript. A caricature artist would have a tough time drawing him. We met at a bar where both of us were drinking, but neither of us was drunk. He invited me back to his apartment, which was one of the nice new ones near North McCarran. He drove us there. I don't remember much about the ride or the apartment or leaving. Mostly, I remember his breath, sharp with peppermint. He chewed gum the whole time and must have gone through 3 sticks by the time I left. And he was nervous. I remember that. His clammy hands trembled as they fumbled over the back clasp of my bra before he gave up, and the elastic snapped against my skin. At one point, he put his hand around the front half of my throat. He started to squeeze, but stopped shortly after I asked him to. Mumbled profanities when the condom fell off, some more adjusting our bodies to try to fit each other, a final effort, and then paralysis. And then nothing. The next morning, my roommates and I made our respective breakfasts: overnight oats for me, an energy drink and protein bar for Sarah, frozen waffles for Darla. "You got home pretty late," Sarah said, cracking her energy drink open. "Yep," I said. "And?" Darla asked, the word drawn out. She rubbed sleep from her eyes. "Did you go home with that weird guy?" "Yep." I said it loud, no chance of shame cracking through. I tried to recall what about him was weird, but nothing came up. He seemed standard issue, nothing remarkable, nothing memorable. The less I made my first time into a big deal, the less power it'd have over me. It was over. That was the most important thing. It was done and would never need to be undone or redone. I was no longer a virgin, but I hadn't lost anything. "Was he any good?" Darla asked. I shrugged. They laughed. Neither of these girls had known me when I was being pulled out of sex ed. They hadn't known me when I left my neighbor's house after watching porn and realized I was crying. I felt a jolt of pain as I stood up to wash out my jar. Neither of them seemed to notice. In the bathroom, I used the mirror of my blush palette to inspect the pain's source, but there wasn't anything unusual. The pain announced itself once in a while throughout the week that followed, but now I feel fine. It's like nothing ever happened. Grade, 96.5 out of 100. Submission comment. Dear Sydney, thank you so much for trusting me with your narrative. I appreciate the way you were able to incorporate your writing voice and this selection of events. Please see the rubric for additional feedback about the structure and style. The descriptions of your sexual education were especially compelling. I am, however, concerned about the recent incident you described, and as a mandated reporter, I may need to file a report with the Title IX office. Please come to my office hours as soon as you're able to. Warmly, Anya. Sydney Jarrett at unr.edu to A. Ludley at unr.edu. Subject, submission comment. Dear Professor Ludley, I just read your submission comment. Thank you for reaching out, but everything is totally fine, and there's definitely no need to report anything. It was completely consensual. On the assignment prompt, it said to craft a narrative that demonstrates your evolving relationship with your sexuality using 2 to 3 carefully chosen events. That's what I tried to do in the assignment. I'm still feeling a little weird about what happened, but I have an appointment set up with someone in the counseling center for next week to talk more about it. Thank you, Sydney. Sydney's the first, now we're back on the brothel tour. Sydney's the first to ask a question during the Q&A portion of the tour. You said that some guys or clients come back over and over again. Do you ever tell them anything about yourself? Like, do you think they could ever find you? She regrets the question as soon as she asks it, but decides to double down. I mean, some of them are dangerous, right? That's why there are panic buttons. Oh, honey, no. They're not dangerous. They're lonely, Liza says. I do tell them about myself, but only the things I want them to know. After they've been coming here for a while, I tell them my real name. Anything is real if someone believes it, right? She pulls out a stick of gum that seems to materialize from nowhere. Sydney winces. Any other questions? What's the most you've ever made in 1 hour, do you think? Trevor asks. Sydney's eyes dart to the professor, who glares at him. Everyone else glares at him too, but not Liza. I don't know, or give me your best guess, she says. I don't know, 1,000, Trevor stammers. Try 10 times that. Who was it that said that they don't get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day? Well, I don't get into bed for less than 1,000. The lounge is empty and no one's tending bar. The professor thanks Liza and they leave. Sydney wonders what made Liza decide on that name and whether this is her fake name or her fake real name. When she goes to the bar with her roommates that night, she realizes that there's nothing stopping her from saying she has a different name. She could be Erica or Jenny, or maybe something more interesting. She could be Andromeda, which is both her favorite character from Greek mythology and her favorite galaxy. Sometimes called the Chained Lady, Andromeda is one of the few galaxies visible to the naked eye. Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to think about chewing gum quite the same way for a long time. Thank you. That was incredible. Daniel Pope is our next reader. Daniel's a writer. Yay! Daniel's a writer and a musician from Seattle. His work has appeared in Narrative Magazine, Bellevue Literary Review, Gulf Coast Journal, and elsewhere. He currently lives in the UK, where he's a doctoral candidate at the University of Manchester's Centre for New Writing. He attended the Writers' Conference 3 times in recent years, including the COVID era, working with Tyler Dilts, Janet Fitch, Chris Lee, Peter Orner, Peter Steinberg, and Andrew Tonkovich. Like so many of our participants, Daniel received scholarships for 2 of those 3 years. He's the author of Go Help Yourself, the winner of the University of New Orleans Press Publishing Lab Prize, and he will read from that novel today. Let's welcome Daniel.
Okay, I'm gonna do this. Hi, everyone. It's so cool to be here with everyone in this beautiful place again, and I love this conference so much. I owe so much to this conference, and I think it's the best. I brought a short story to the first one that I went to in 2019 that was this sort of seed for this novel. And I also workshopped 2 of the chapters of this novel at the 2023 one. So, yeah, I owe a lot to this conference, and I think I'm very lucky to be here again and to be invited back. And I will come back anytime they want me, as long as I still have a pulse. I will come back. So, yeah, okay, I'll talk about my book. Go Help Yourself is my novel. It stars Corbin Moore, who is an overeducated underachiever who has an eating disorder, and he's also a prodigious weed smoker. And when he gets fired from his bookstore job, his mother, who's a very famous self-help author, takes it upon herself to sort of fix him with her sort of self-helping regimen. Also, he's being pursued and attacked by crows everywhere he goes. He doesn't know why. That's what the crow's doing. So at this point in the novel, the attacks have gotten so bad that he's basically not going outside anymore. Until now, because he's run out of weed. It's a silly novel, and it is sad at times too, but I did pick a silly part. And he's feeding them walnuts to sort of try to bribe them, but he's also got a wooden stake. He's covering all his bases. Okay. Right across the street was the High Life, the dispensary. I crossed, holding the stake before me. Some of the crows shot down to where I had tossed the walnuts, waddling around and dipping their beaks to the pavement. I couldn't tell if I was making it better or worse. Maybe the nuts just attracted more hostile crows who would attack me the moment I ran out of bribes. When I made it to the door, I pushed it open and leapt inside, closed it behind me, pressed an eye to the glass. The bell tinkled against my thigh. "Hello?" a voice behind me said. "Shh," I said, "it's the crows." The voice made a throat-clearing noise. I turned toward it. "You don't see them?" I said, hiking a thumb over my shoulder. Tom ducked down to peer through the glass door. "Oh," he said, "yeah, there's some crows out there." "Right," I said, "I'm not crazy." I approached the counter and laid the stake down. Tom eyed it. My watch vibrated, and I looked down and saw that I was in the fat burn zone. "What pairs best with Brian Williams?" I said. Tom's red hair, normally long and curly, was buzzed low, and his Nordic eyes stared at me from where they crouched close together on either side of his nose. They jumped wide, and he said, "Oh, Corbin. Holy shit, bro. I didn't recognize you." Then his brow crinkled up. "Is everything okay?" he said. For a moment, I thought I might cry, but I held it together, giving only a curt nod. I moved my stake aside, and he set out a couple jars of delicious-looking neon green clouds of weed. "This one is mega chill," he said. "I think you've had crazy chill, right? This is way chiller. It's like if Crazy Chill smoked Crazy Chill. Now, this one here is true insight, real head high. It'll lead you straight to enlightenment, bro. Brian Williams will be like God himself on your TV screen, giving you the whole meaning of life." "Sick," I said. "What's this one?" "This one? Oh boy," he said. "This one we just got in. This one is the Cadillac of weed. No, it's the Jaguar, the Ferrari, the Batmobile of weed. Corbin, may I present to you?" He pushed the jar toward me and tapped 3 times on the lid. "The sticky, icky spider," he said. Clouds galloped through the sky. A choir of angels sang. The dead were coming back to life. What was once lost would be found. "Sticky, icky spider," I intoned. "That's right," Tom said. "It'll bring the rain down and wash you out, then bring the sun out and dry you right back up again. You know what I mean?" "It's everything I ever wanted," I said. "I'll take it." But when I swiped my card, the tablet made a buzzer noise. Tom said, pulling the screen toward himself. "May I?" I deposited the card into his outstretched hand. A hairline fracture crawled through the bedrock of my yearning gut. He swiped the card. The buzzer noise again. Declined, he said. Do you have another card? I cleared my throat. Do you take credit? I said. He took my credit card and swiped it. There was no way the credit limit had been exceeded yet. I wasn't sure how much it was, but I hadn't used the card that many times, just for the locksmith, and Buck, since I bailed on our session without giving him enough notice, and groceries, since I'd drained my checking account, and rent at the beginning of July. The buzzer went off again. I was like a failing game show contestant. He extended the red plastic toward me. No, I said, it's not possible. Try again. The card hung in the air for a moment, then sliced back into the machine. Buzz. Sorry, dude, Tom said, twisting his mouth. Maybe call the bank? Mom must have seen the charges and disabled the credit card. How could she do this to me? What if I had an emergency? This was a fucking emergency. My hand trembled so bad that when I tried to put the card back in my wallet, everything spilled out onto the counter. $9 in cash, my ID and debit and library cards, the Orca card for the light rail, Ivy's business card. I swiped up the pile. If Mom thought I was going to come crawling back to her, she had another thing coming. I'd rather starve to death. I'd rather never smoke weed again. I crammed my wallet and its contents into my pocket and watched Tom put away the Mega Chill True Insight and, Tom said, dude? My hand was clamped on top of the sticky, icky spider jar. Tom had his fingers wrapped around the base. He tugged at it, but I resisted. Never smoke weed again? What was I, insane? Hey, Tom said. I pulled it automatically toward me. I was not in control. Corbin, he said, could you, It was my inner child. I couldn't let my sensor impede my inner child. It wasn't healthy. Stop it, dude. Hey! With a big yank, the jar came out of his hands. But my inner child had overestimated the necessary force, and the jar escaped my grasp, flying into the air. It wobbled across the room in a languid parabola, sunbeams catching in the tiny aureate hairs that clung to the sides, those glorious terpenes and cannabinoids that gave the product its intoxicating power. Engulfed in beautiful flame, the jar rose like a rocket, then like a doomed angel it fell, shattering its halo all over the floor. Shit, I said. Tom shook his head sadly. I had never seen anybody so disappointed before. Come on, man, he said. I'm so sorry, I said. He sighed and looked down at his hands. His face creased with torment, like a priest wrestling with the burden of doubt. What kind of God, he must have been thinking. What kind of God would bring such cruelty upon such innocent primo bud? Corbin, he said, I'm sorry it's come to this, but I have to ask you to leave. I couldn't speak through the shame that clogged my throat. I just nodded my heavy head and grabbed the stake. At the door, I stopped and heaved a deep breath toward my shoes and managed to say, goodbye, Tom. It's been real. Then I strode forth to meet my fate. Thank you.
Okay, let's adjust this back down. So I am really hoping we see Daniel at the Follies. Uh-oh. He's giving me that face. I don't know. We're not going to see him. That's too bad. Maybe a song tonight. Who knows? Okay. Our next reader is A.M. Sosa. A.M. is a queer Mexican-American writer from Stockton, California, and a graduate of UC Irvine's MFA programs in writing, where they were awarded the 2022 Henfield Prize. Their fiction has been published in Zizova and the Santa Monica Review. A recipient of a UCI scholarship, A.M. attended the conference 4 years ago in 2022 and worked with Leslie Tenorio and Oscar Villalon. Today they will be reading from their debut novel, And I'll Take Out Your Eyes, published by Algonquin. So here we go. A.M. Is A.M. here?
All right, hello. Thank you. All right. All you got to know is one, it's been 9 years since the narrator has seen his father. Two, the last time he saw him, they got into a physical confrontation in which the narrator almost killed his father, which drove the father out of the home. And three, he won't see his father again. A little before I moved out to Irvine, my father came to the house for Sunday breakfast. He came because Ma was doing better. During her illness, they'd gotten back in touch. He helped out when he could, driving her to appointments when brother was working and I wasn't around. So then, less than a month before Irvine, he was there at the door. He was wearing calisthenics gloves and a blue runner's headband with a reflective strip that pressed his thick gray hair back into a poof, dressed more for a 5K than for Sunday breakfast. He hugged me the way a father does, no hesitation, all smiles, like he'd forgotten how long it had been since we last parted and under what circumstances. I hugged him back out of sheer awkwardness. As we separated, he grabbed me by the shoulders. He opened his mouth like he was getting ready to say something. His eyes softened. He closed his mouth, smiled, and simply let go. He strode past me into the kitchen like he still lived there and greeted brother and Ma. Hugged Ma longest of all. Ma and brother hadn't even started on breakfast. It was early. He was early, but he didn't care. Apparently he'd gotten on a health kick, started exercising, losing weight, watching what he ate. It was strange to see him interact with them. Kept thinking how natural it all seemed except for my being there. I had the nagging suspicion that they'd been seeing each other while I was away. That seemed like the kind of thing that could go unmentioned. They were too casual, too familiar with the last 9 years of one another's lives. But I wasn't angry, nor paranoid exactly. I just felt the way I sometimes have in dreams, enthralled to a peculiar logic, one that works just so long as I don't think about it too hard. He didn't offer to help with the cooking, and this alone seemed grounds enough to believe he hadn't changed. I don't know whether it was my own defensiveness or spite, but I had to tell myself he was the same, to hold him at a distance, as the man I had guarded against my entire life. He wondered aloud if he had enough time to get a quick workout in. Ma said he did. It would take about another hour for them to make the chilaquiles. He asked me if I might want to work out with them. I felt my body stand at attention, my fists curled inside my pockets, my jaw clenched. I was aware of everyone's eyes on me, and it was true. I wasn't helping either. I couldn't think of an excuse, so instead, surprising myself, I said, yeah, sure, I'd work out with them. Out in the front yard, he told me he'd just been for a run and really just wanted to cool down. To do that, he said, he usually just take a walk, stopping intermittently to do push-ups. I said that was fine, and so we set off. It was the end of summer, an early morning, early enough that the heat was still bearable, high 70s. I didn't know where to begin, what to say to him. Our last encounter was all I could think about. Nonchalant as he was, I must have been true for him too. He was swinging his arms back and forth across his chest, looking up at the sky and smiling. You know, he said, my mother could predict rain just by looking at the morning sky. Maybe that doesn't seem so impressive, but sometimes she'd predict rain even when there were no clouds, and she was always right. I looked up at the blue, blue sky, electric and uniformly bright, like paint. I asked him, is it gonna rain? He chuckled. I don't know. She never taught me how. She said she would if I didn't leave, but I had to. He stopped, dropped, and did 20 push-ups. And he got up, gave me his gloves, and I did the same. We kept walking. I asked him how it was for him before he crossed over, and he told me about moving from the village to the city, living in a bakery, sleeping on a cot in the back, going to accounting school. I wanted to ask how that worked since I knew he hadn't finished high school, flunked out. He and Ma would joke about it when I was growing up, but I didn't ask. Every time I glanced at him, had this feeling, something happening between us, and I didn't want to interrupt whatever that was. It was strange, after all those years, walking next to him, doing push-ups with him, seeing him smile every time he looked up. It was like he was expecting some change in the weather, and so each time he looked, finding the sky as blue as ever, he would smile. He told me about finishing near the top of his class, how he liked it, accounting. Numbers made sense to him, made the world feel smaller, more tangible, more legible. With numbers, the world could be tallied, systematized, defined. After school, he got a job working for a small electronics business. It was the first time he'd seen a computer. After a few months, his superior went on maternity leave, and he got better pay, more hours, was able to leave the bakery, get the smell of flour out of his clothes, his hair. When his superior came back after having her baby, she was promoted, and he was going to be promoted as well, but it wasn't what he wanted. He spoke then of summers in the village, when all the older guys would come back from Texas and California with money, cars, gifts for their families. He knew if he didn't go young, he likely never would. The bump in his pay would have been okay, but not great. And anyway, he'd always wanted to go, to be one of those guys to come back bearing gifts, a small crowd gathering around him, eager to hear stories of life on the other side. And so he left. And by the time he had money to come back, things had changed. Crossing wasn't the same. Still, looking up at the sky, he smiled again, did his push-ups, and passed me his gloves, still warm from his hands. Somehow the routine of the workout held our whole history at bay. As we walked, did push-ups, both growing more tired with every set, I seemed almost to forget how it had been to grow up with him, how scared I'd been, all of it gone, and only the ordinary awkwardness of conversing with a stranger, the discomfort of not knowing this man, my father. And yet I suspected the same couldn't be said for him, how he felt about me. I didn't sense any awkwardness in him, not in the way he talked or moved. It was like we were old friends. He was comfortable. I wasn't. It makes me think about how charismatic he was, that cool confidence of a guy who belonged wherever he was. I think that's what made the whole thing feel so weird to me, his ease, and implicit in that ease, a refusal to acknowledge any of the things that had happened, the things he'd done to me. He just put it all behind him, apparently. Was that charm, charisma, sociopathy? Strange to consider how easily I might have done the same if I'd been another person entirely. On our way back, after our last set of push-ups, I kept asking him questions. I was genuinely curious but also weirded out by the situation, still aware of the possibility that perhaps in silence, something harder, more painful would open between us. And I didn't want that. I don't think he did either, though when we did lapse, finally, into silence, it was a soft and easy one. Walking in silence, it was surprising to me to realize that he hadn't asked me a single question. I'd kept the conversation going, focused on him, but still, there were lulls, and now this silence. It was something to do, I sensed, with who my father was at his core, how at ease he felt with the one-way line of communication. What it truly meant, I wasn't ready to acknowledge yet. I was just glad about how tired we both were after that final set, glad that because we were tired, we could walk the rest of the way back in that easy silence, no danger hanging between us. When we reached the house, he looked up the sky one last time. "Guess I was wrong," he said. He smiled at me, opened the door, and went in. Thank you.
Stunning. Thank you, AM. So just a big hand for all of our readers. What an evening. Their books are all available in the tiny house, so make your way there. They'll sign them for you. And dinner starts soon, so see you soon. Books for sale. Oh, outside in the reception, not tiny house, so straight out there.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we hope the readers will come up and get the photo taken together. So AM, please please join us up here.
If we could all find our seats, that would be fabulous. Thank you, everyone. All right. I'm giving Anna and Hunter a look, and they're going to give me a look. Hello, everyone. This is a very exciting evening, and thank you all for being here. Wasn't it amazing to have that storm roll in? Just extraordinary. I'm just briefly here to say, on your day off, come up with those skits. Come to me with those wonderful musical events that you have planned, because the Follies is coming. The Follies are coming on Thursday night. And it is my great, great pleasure to introduce the person who will be introducing our beautiful readers this evening, one of my dearest friends, a remarkable singer and fiddler and banjo player who you'll get to hear on Thursday, Caradwyn Irvine Spatz. Please welcome her.
Hello, my name is, in fact, Caradwyn Irvine Spatz, and yes, it's a whole story, but we're not going to get into it. And I will be your host tonight. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Monday night reading. And as so often happens with communities, there is an actual family at the heart of this event. So I'd like to start by thanking the Hall family. Brett, Sands, Louie, Hunter, Lindsay, and for the first time ever, Molly! As well as the de facto family of Lisa Alvarez and Andrew Tonkovich for all that they do to welcome us. Yeah. I'd also like to thank the entire board of directors for their work and support. In these deeply unsettled times, art and support for the arts is vital to our continued humanity. So a big round of applause for that. Also, if you would like to support the community of writers, there is a donate page at communityofwriters.org, and donations go to scholarships and keeping the community running. So your support is profoundly appreciated if you are ever so interested. I'd also like to thank the elves, Livia Bloom, Anna Carter, and Hannah Ross. All of them are writers. They solve so many problems that we do not even know exist during the week, and I am profoundly thankful for that. I'd like to give a round to all of the people who've been serving us food and drinks and cleaning up after us through the week. And I would also love for everybody to give a huge round of applause to Alice from Alice's Mountain Market. Right there. Because for decades, she's been one of the most staunch and loyal supporters of the community of writers, and she is a true Olympic Valley local. Lastly, I'd like to thank each and every one of you gathered here. It takes all of us to create this community. All of tonight's readers will have books for sale, I believe, in the lobby. Yes, okay. The hours on the bookstore are listed. If the bookstore door is open, they are open. And a word to the wise, every year they sell out of certain titles and the most attractive shirts. So don't wait too long to get that book shopping done. So earlier this week, Jason Roberts, quoting Margaret Atwood in his opening remarks, said that a word after a word after a word is power. And that power is part of what has drawn us here away from the world as a community. Tonight we are going to hear from 4 powerful voices who put a detail after a detail after a detail to create whole worlds. Worlds that are rich and varied, worlds that would be difficult or impossible to enter without their mastery of craft and their generosity of attention. I'm really excited to introduce you to each of our writers tonight and be transported alongside you by their words and their powers. So first off, we have Bea Sax. B. Sachs is an alum from 2019, and so far in my books is the hero of the week. They came on very short notice, very short notice, to fill in for an author who had to cancel at the last minute, and we're all incredibly fortunate to have this insightful, brilliant, and hardworking human enriching the community. Let's have another round of applause for B. B. Sachs, They, Them, is a queer writer. Their debut novel, City of a Thousand Gates, HarperCollins, was awarded the Janet Heidinger Kafka Prize for Fiction in 2022. Their second novel, The Lover, also by HarperCollins, was listed as a favorite book of 2023 by Elle magazine. A former journalist, B previously worked at Vanity Fair in a variety of roles before moving to Israel-Palestine to study sacred texts at Tel Aviv University, as well as Hebrew and Arabic in Israeli and Palestinian living rooms around the region, pursuits that helped to shape their first two novels. They received an MFA from UC Irvine and now live in Los Angeles with their dog, who I don't want to mispronounce the name, Papik. Very cute. B isn't just brave in coming here to cover workshops. In an interview that is a must-read on LitHub, they said they began asking themselves the question, who might you be outside of the structures of power you were raised in? I had spent my life in militantly nationalistic, heteronormative carceral states from America to Israel. If I were free, they ask, if we were all free, who would I let myself be? So, they began to think of themselves as a text that I am writing and rewriting, a palimpsest. Now, I have to admit, I have to look it up. But a palimpsest is a manuscript page from which the text has been scraped or washed off in preparation for reuse. Palimpsests were made because the substrate upon which the words resided were themselves precious, hard to make parchment or marble or brass. And the new words, which demanded writing, were urgent. The scraping or washing off of old text was rarely perfect, and ghosts of the old words rise and meander through the new narrative. At dinner last night, was it just last night? Wow, gosh, time is weird here. B was talking about the understanding and tradition that each letter of the alphabet, or aleph-bet, is its own world. How's that for power? But a world that is only potential, which waits to exist until it is given life through being spoken. Their own name, and here I'm quoting from the LitHub interview again, was pulled from the letters of my given name. More than that, I've always loved the letter B. The Torah begins with the Hebrew equivalent, Bet, the second letter of the alphabet. Why not start Genesis with the first letter of the alphabet? Aleph, as the sages wondered. I suspect the Bible knows what any storyteller knows. A story never begins at the beginning. B. Sachs.
Thank you. That was very moving. I'm honored. I'm honored to be here. This is the best substitute teaching gig I've ever had. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'll jump right in. I'm trying out some new work. What you need to know is that our narrator's name is Ray. He's transitioning, female to male. He's 40. He's currently living with his mother in Canada while his ex-fiance moves out of their house. And he's become obsessed with Jung because she, the ex-fiance, is leaving him for a Jungian therapist. Okay. A routine developed. In the mornings, I read Jung. In the afternoons, Mum and I went on walks. And as afternoon slipped into evening, I worked until Mum called me for dinner. My only contribution, I did dishes. All those years I'd wondered how people do it, live the life of the mind. Turns out you need a woman, a wife, a mother. When Thoreau went to the woods to live deliberately, his mother did his laundry. Now my mother was doing mine. Mom and I walked to one of our favorite waterfalls. The way there was an incline carved out of rock. We climbed over slabs of black splintered slate. We ascended through a forest that glowed pale green, as if the source of light wasn't the sun, but the earth itself, radiating. Jung says that when man invented sin, he invented secrets, I said, between breaths, which is to say the unconscious. I had trouble keeping up with my wiry, vigorous mother who did hikes of any difficulty in old sneakers without socks. Dreams, like art, can be seen as direct expressions of the unconscious, which is to say, of secrets we keep from ourselves. Like that old joke, Mom said. I waited, but she didn't go on. If I were my father, I'd get annoyed at her for assuming I could somehow read her mind. Instead, I asked her, "Tell me." We were following a stream up to its source. A man gets to an analyst. He says, "Doctor, I made quite the Freudian slip this week." And the doctor says, "Oh," and the patient says, "Yes, at dinner with my parents. I meant to ask my mother to pass the salt. And instead I said, 'You ruined my life, you bitch.'" Mom was laughing by the time she got to the last part. "Yes," I said, "Freud believed the patient would invariably give himself away by what he did or did not say." "Oh," Mom said politely. We paused by a pool of clear mountain water. It struck me then that I was no longer a daughter talking to her mother. I was some guy speaking to a woman with a tone of authority on a subject he had only a passing knowledge of. Wasn't that mansplaining? Was I mansplaining? What next? Would I make my mother watch a documentary about the fall of the Roman Empire? Would I be the kind of guy who couldn't cry except for when talking about World War II? Shut up. Calm down. What's the opposite of mansplaining? Asking questions, right? Ask her a question. "Do you remember your dreams?" Sometimes, yes. Long-legged insects skated over the still pool. Like what? You want to hear about my dreams? My mother has never been to therapy. I do. I really did. Sometimes I dream that I'm in my childhood home. My mother was raised in a planned community built by an aluminum plant for its workers. There were 3 models of house to choose from, and all the streets were named for, wow, the nightmare. Scientists. "I dream I'm in my room," she said. As the only girl, she had her own room. There's a door, not the door to my room, another door, one that wasn't there before. It's a yellow door. I turned to her so sharply it hurt my neck. I knew that door. I had seen that door. She continued, "I go through the door into a room I have never been in. I think to myself," I finished the thought for her, "How did I not know? How did I not know this room was here all along?" "Exactly," she exclaimed. "But Mummy, I have the same dream. Almost the same. In my dream, the room is hidden in the basement." "What's in your secret room?" I asked. My own was a deeper down with candles and the roots of trees all gilded like reliquaries. "Just a room," she said. She could not tell me any more. Same dream, different rooms, different houses. Each of us dream of discovering a new room in the house we grew up in. Could my mother and I be looking for each other? No. I am looking for her, and she is looking for her mother. There's always a deeper past. Our house was built over a stream, in the basement, past the washer and dryer, on a concrete floor, through a plywood door tucked behind the water heater. You'll find a room built into the mountain. My grandfather had kept his tools there. Now, nobody used it. Old hammers and handsaws and flat bars hung from their hooks. Jutting through the wall was an enormous granite outcropping. You had to climb over it to get to the tools. Kids weren't allowed in there alone, but if you went with Grandpa, you could touch the cool, damp rock. It secreted something thicker than water, like the miraculous stones of the old world, weeping rose oil, and a stream poured out of it, bisecting the basement, a stream carved into the concrete of the floor, no wider than a child's wrist. In Modern Man in Search of a Soul, Jung likens the unconscious to a cellar where creatures move slowly in the darkness. As my mother and I lay sleeping upstairs, the stream flowed below us. It grew stronger with the early summer rain, the stream did. Even clear afternoons began with morning rain. I was almost sure I could see a dark spot growing on the ceiling above the dining room table. We needed to fix the roof. We needed to fix a lot of things. Later that summer, I would find that, like my mother and me, Jung too dreamt of a secret room. For several years, he dreamt of discovering a part of his house he had not known existed. He believed the dream anticipated the arrival of an obscure medieval text on alchemy, and he was right. When the manuscript arrived, he reported, the dream ceased. For Jung, a dream missive from the unconscious might reveal more than the dreamer could himself. A dream could diagnose a physical ailment or foretell an event. Our unconscious mind perceives what we consciously cannot. Whatever will happen, you've already dreamt it in a letter that is making its way to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bea. Francisco Goldman has published 2 books of nonfiction and 5 novels. Starting with the nonfiction, The Interior Circuit, a Mexico City Chronicle, was named by the LA Times one of the 10 best books of the year and received the Blue Metropolis Premio Azul of 2017. The Art of Political Murder won the Index on Censorship TR Fievel Book Award and the Wola Duke Human Rights Book Award. The Long Night of White Chickens, his first novel, was awarded the American Academy Sue Kaufman Prize for First Fiction. His novels have been finalists for several prizes, including twice the PEN/Faulkner Prize. The Ordinary Seaman, which was number 2 novel, was a finalist for the International IMPAC Dublin Literary Award. The Divine Husband was a finalist for the Believer Book Award. His novel Say Her Name won the 2011 Prix Féminin Étranger Prize in France for a French translation, and his most recent novel, Monkey Boy, was a finalist for the 2022 Pulitzer Prize in Fiction and won an American Book Award. His books have been published in 16 languages. If that were not quite enough, he has been a Guggenheim Fellow, a Cullman Center Fellow at the New York Public Library, and a Berlin Fellow at the American Academy. He's a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, received a 2017 Barnes & Noble Writers for Writers Prize, and was named a recipient of PEN Mexico's 2017 Award for Journalistic and Literary Excellence. He has many other honors and publications, but I think kind of the most charming thing about him is actually his faculty page. At the college at which he teaches, he has also taught at Columbia University, Brooklyn College, the Institute of New Journalism, and elsewhere, but where he regularly teaches 1 quarter a year is at Trinity College in Hartford. Trinity says, Francisco Goldman, Alan K. Smith Professor of English Language and Literature. Trinity College faculty member since 2002. BA, University of Michigan, and nothing else. Francisco said in his craft talk that he steals details not stories. But if he is a thief, then he is the best of thieves, a kind of modern-day Robin Hood, unerring in the details he chooses to lift from the muck and flood of everyday experience. And then with his sharp eye and sharper pen, turning the quotidian into prismatic, gem-like observations, which he shares unstintingly with his readers. Please make welcome Francisco Goldman.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It was so kind, and thank you all for coming. And I've never been here before. It's just been that was a beautiful reading. It's just been a wonderful few days. And my 8-year-old daughter already has decided she's going to come live in California someday as soon as she's old enough. And anyway, I'm going to read a few pages. Well, 6 pages if it's okay, from the novel I'm working on. The one I spoke about the other day that is set in a city inspired by New Bedford. This is from the first section. It's a long first section that tells the first day. It kind of has 3 main characters, but this is the main character. Josefina Chach, who's a 15-year-old Quiche Maya girl who's just arrived from 5 weeks in immigrant detention to join her older sister, who she hasn't seen in 7 or 8 years, in the port city. She's been there for 2 days relaxing, and today she's going to start work in a fish factory, in a fish house, even before she's been enrolled in school. The reason she decided to come up was she desperately wanted to go to school, and in the village, the hamlet she lives in, once she got through, first person in her family to get through middle school, and to get to high school, she would have to walk an hour and a half to the highway, catch a bus. In the rainy season, it might be 3 hours. Her family wouldn't be able to afford the textbooks anyway. And she just understood if she could somehow get to New Bedford and join her sister, she'd be able to go to school. But she gets up there, and her sister is like, you have to go to work. And fish house, you start off to go to a fish house. You put on, in a cold fish house, every one of them, they put on 3 pairs of jeans, 5 sweaters. They wear these big, heavy coats that they work in all week that stink to high heaven of fish. And that's what she's in. It's a very cold day. It's so cold the harbor is frozen for the first time in years. She's wearing her cousin, Fredito, who's 7, his ski mask. Anyway, so this is just them. It's really nothing. It's just them walking to work for the first time. That's all. I wonder if I can see. Josefina was warm inside her foul, moist layers, but the windless cold penetrated the synthetic wool of Fredito's mask. The old boots were loose-fitting despite her 3 pairs of socks. It wasn't so easy to walk in them. She saw iron-hued, frozen puddles. This city is only pretty when it snows, said Janata, her big sister. What are monster fish? Asked Josefina. Uy, the dogfish, also the fraile fish and the patines. They cut and pack those in the monster fish room. It's separate. Are they called dogfish because they look like dogs? God was drunk that day to make a fish like that for people to eat, said Janata. A fish with more urine than blood. A fish that doesn't even pee in a normal way. They say the dogfish pees through its skin. Sí, hombre, through its skin. Josefina asked, and the other fish looks like a monk? A slimy, brown, ugly monster monk with such a huge mouth it can eat your head off with one bite. And the other one? The skate? You wear those fish on your feet to skate on the ice. What do I know? I don't understand. Don't worry, they're not going to put you with the monster fish. Not today. We must walk faster, Josefina. Who gives the fish those names? What a question, Josefina. I don't know. Probably the Englishmen. As they walked, the sisters passed or glimpsed at cross streets and in the gaps between houses. More than century-old brick factory and mill buildings, spray-painted, scribbled facades, smashed-out, boarded-up windows and doors. Some stood in lots filled with brick and concrete rubble amid high yellow grass and weeds. Behind, rusted and ripped wire fences. The street they were on followed a downhill incline, gradually becoming steeper. Janata said, "When I first came to this city, I thought, what is this place? It's so ugly, so cold and gray and dirty. All these dead trees, dead grass. What happened? Was there a curse? Even in summer, with everything green, I couldn't take Fredito to the playground in the park because of all the drug addict needles, the condoms too, even inside the sandbox. Do you know about drug addicts and syringes? Do you know what a condom is?" Josephine said that she knew about drug addicts and condoms. Janata exclaimed, "Why do you know about condoms? I didn't when I was your age. Is it the internet?" This is taking place around 2005. The first time I ever heard about a condom was because someone gave one to my friend Lucia for her novio. And guess what Lucia did with it? Ay, sister, but you'll never guess. She was afraid that if she gave the condom to her novio, he'd be angry. Well, yes, he'd be angry. So she boiled the condom in water with some herbs to make a tea. And she gave him the tea, and he drank it. Josefina let out a shrill cry of surprise, and she laughed. And so did her sister. Then Janata said, "Whatever else you do here, listen to me. Do not get pregnant. Do you understand me, chica? God help you, Josefina. I can't protect you every minute. Far from it." Waiting with Janata at the crosswalk for the light to change, Josefina had her first look at the waterfront, a long, gapped row of industrial-looking buildings and warehouses, some from the time of Wales, spread out along the freeway's opposite side, protruding at various distances against the gray sky were storage tanks, silos, chimneys, the tops of cranes. White flashing flocks of seagull rose over and plunged behind rooftops like fluttering clouds of shrieking moths. A young man in a long wool coat, drooping from slumped shoulders to ankles, hands thrust straight down into the coat's pockets, stood at the edge of the traffic island in the middle of the freeway. He wore a red and black plaid hat with long lowered ear flaps, like El Chavo del Ocho's hat, thought Josefina, and long wisps of orange hair dangled out from it, whipping wildly in the traffic's wake. When the walk sign turned green, he stepped out into the northbound row of stopped trucks and cars, his bare hand out. Nobody lowered a window. He looked blankly at the sisters as they passed, face ghoulishly pale and gaunt like an old man's. But he's not old, thought Josefina. His lips so big and pink like a pouting boy's lips, and something like a tiny tot of desperate lostness in each of his eyes. Irked by Josefina's fascination with the gringo beggar, by how she even glanced back as they reached the other side of the freeway, Janata, as if she was sure that the gringo beggar understood Spanish, practically shouted, "That's one of those homeless drug addicts. He's there every day asking for money to buy his drugs." But the traffic had charged forward again, drowning out her words. "Did you see his hat? Puche, I wish that was my hat," she went on. "That's not a hat they give away to poor people." The sisters headed southward on the long waterfront sidewalk, next to long-defunct, rusted railroad tracks. As far ahead as Josefina could see, people were walking alone or two or three together, a few even on bicycles, coming towards them or headed in the same direction, vapor clouds over their heads. They must be fishermen, she thought, with excited curiosity. But then it was mostly women passing. And though almost all of their faces were at least partly covered, she could tell they were from her part of the world. Not fishermen, fish house workers. Janata asked abruptly, "You know who are the most addicted to drugs here?" "The fishermen." "Si, hombre, the fishermen are the most addicted to drugs." 4 footsteps striking the frozen pavement, not in unison. The fall of Josefina's boots louder than the slaps of her sister's tennis. Why did she feel so indignant? Because 2 days ago, Janata and Ramses had praised the fishermen for their bravery and the money they earned. Ramses had even said that he wanted to be a fisherman, but now her sister was saying that fishermen were the same as that gringo beggar. How, from one day to the next, could her sister speak in such opposite ways about the fishermen? Then Janata said, "At least the fishermen have money to buy their own drugs. They're not the ones always assaulting and robbing us. Look, Josefina, fishing boats." When Josefina had seen the ocean for the first time a few days before from the plane, she'd thought that the slate-gray expanse below was sky and that the plane was flying upside down. She'd never even seen a lake. The parking lot she'd followed Janata into extended down the middle of a wide wharf. So many fishing boats tightly berthed together along its sides, nose to tail and 2 or 3 deep, boats looking as if they drew nourishment directly from that maternal wharf, nourishment passed hull to hull. All of it, boats and wharves, were set down on this side of a blotchy, snowy plain that stretched away towards the horizon. Except it wasn't a snowy plain. It was the body of water called the harbor. Chunks and scraps of ice thickly surrounded the partially submerged hulls, and just beyond were flat ice isles separated by crevices. And further out, the frozen harbor was enclosed on the left by a curving peninsula covered with gray-brown trees, dark pines, low rooftops, a few ribbons of smoke unfurling skyward, a church steeple. A dark wall crossed the rest of the whitish polar expanse, forming the harbor's outer limit, gradually bending toward its most rightward point. The hurricane barrier, Josephine would learn that wall was called, though not today. In the middle of the wall was a gated opening, through which passed vessels bound for or coming in from Buzzards Bay in the open Atlantic. Janata said, "The harbor is frozen, but the ice is starting to break up, you see?" Josefina felt how her own eyes had opened wide, somehow opening inside herself, too. The spinous complexity rising from every fishing boat formed all together against the whitish backdrop a dense alphabet of jagged, single, crossed, joined, looped, slanted, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, mostly black lines, but some also white, blue, red. Those are beams and poles, she thought to herself, possessing words for those. Also cables, ladders, antennae, rusted big discs. Heavy-looking iron beds of chains, spikes and blades, laid down upon some boat decks or standing upright inside the sides. What could those be? And those enormous shaggy spools of colorful threads mounted at the rear. Dispersed throughout the boats and their rigging was a random punctuation of small iron geometries in tiny, mostly orange dots. Windowed cabins, several lit from within, like scattered dwellings in a mountain hamlet on a gray afternoon. Glimmering light bulbs strung as if between market stalls. An intensely beaming lamp like a glowing silver eye. Stacked cages, strewn nets, black tires, colored plastic barrels. She spotted a few human figures, like bundled up spider monkeys, moving through the tangled branches of a jungle where almost nothing was green. A noise of steady crunching and loud snaps, as if from innumerable dry sticks coming from 2 small boats like pickup trucks plowing the harbor, breaking and crushing ice. Further out, a larger boat slowly advanced, opening a darkly gleaming watery channel. And like a fleeing wooded island, twinkling with lights and trailing black as smoke, a fishing boat was making its way down another channel to the opening in the long dark wall. When the fishing boats can't dock where we work, it's important for them to get to the auction house, said Janata bafflingly. She lifted her arm and said, "Over there." "What's going to happen?" asked Josephina. "To the ice? It's going to melt." Gull cries cut sharply through the fish-tanged freezing air. From far away, the wounded bellow of a ship's horn, the gray sky immense, cold and empty. Josefina felt her face stuck in a gaping, stupid expression, and she turned away from Janata as if to hide from her that she was incapable of changing her expression. She'd forgotten that Fredito's masked carrot hat was pulled down over her face. This first real look at the ocean, a glimpse of a tremendous vulnerability, a temporary rupture, Madre Tierra's secret underbelly and womb exposed, covered in ice. Soon the ocean would heal itself, become water again. Josefina felt an odd, inexplicable gratitude. Her sister said, "You're asking yourself, why did Janata tell me to come to this awful place? Isn't that true? But it wasn't me who told you to come here. Nan said you wanted to come. And yes, to go to school. I know, you must go to school. But sorry, chica, the true reason you are here is not school. You don't know? $7.50 an hour. 40 hours a week, sometimes 60. That's why. Does Tat earn in a day of work what we earn in 1 hour? Nobody will ever say, "Ay, Josefina, you are so lucky to work in a fish house." Nobody will ever say that, but you are lucky. Do you know why? Because every fish in this ocean carries a coin inside its belly that's only for us, to help them be reborn. Si, hombre, for us, waiting for the fish with our knives. Someday we are going home, and we'll use the money we've saved here to start an apple farm. And every apple we grow on that farm will be a fish reborn. Well, I say that is what this is. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I forgot to mention that Francisco also directs the Ora Estrada Prize, which we heard Michael Spurgeon speak so eloquently about on Saturday, and which I encourage you to learn more about at www.oraestrada.com. Now, we're going to hear from Shobha Rao. She is the author of An Unrestored Woman, a short story collection, and the novels Indian Country and Girls Burn Brighter. Rao is the winner of the Catherine Ann Porter Prize for Fiction and was a Grace Paley, okay, let's do this. And was a Grace Paley Teaching Fellow at the New School. Her story, Kavita and Mustafa, was chosen by T.C. Boyle for inclusion in Best American Short Stories. Girls Burn Brighter was longlisted for the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize and was a finalist for the California Book Award and the Goodreads Choice Awards. It has also been translated into 15 languages. And she lives in San Francisco. It's in her bio. I thought it was important. There you go. Although Shobha will be reading from Girls Burn Brighter, I read Indian Country, her second novel, and I loved how her vivid writing in that book let me smell, touch, and inhabit the beauty of the unlikely pairing of both Varanasi on the banks of the Ganges and Mansfield, a small town in Montana. It also let me feel really personally the absurdity and injustice of the local prejudices and customs of each place. It makes sense that on the panel on Saturday, Shobha said, and I'm paraphrasing poorly, but basically, that she wants the details of writing to create solidity, tangibleness, irrefutability. She said that the writer's job is not merely to create any old kind of chair from the 2x4 of story, but a throne worthy of a queen. For this reading, I am hoping that all of your thrones come equipped with seatbelts. Please welcome Shobha Rao.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I was last here in 2002 as a participant, and so this is a magical homecoming for me, and great, because I am short. A magical homecoming because once you have come to the Community Writers, it will become a home. It is a home. So thank you for having me back, to Brett and the entire team. So before I read from Girls Burn Brighter, I would like to tell you a little bit about how the book came to be. I always find that really interesting. So I started writing in 1999. And I wrote for 15 years before I got anything published. And I mean anything. And the first thing I did get published was a short story in an Australian online journal. And they bought my short story for $25. 15 years, $25. I'll let you guys do the math. So soon after that, though, I did get a contract to write a novel. Over the moon. I mean, my entire adult life, I'd been waiting for this, right? And then I was ready. I was ready to write this novel because I had worked with survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking, and I knew what this novel was going to be. This novel was going to follow two young women from a village in India, impoverished young women. One of them was going to be trafficked into sexual and domestic slavery into the United States, based on a true story out of Berkeley, California. And her friend, who was going to be in an abusive marriage that she leaves, was going to decide that she was going to go find this friend, who she hadn't been in touch with in years, had no idea where she was, right? So the novel was going to alternate between their two perspectives. I was ready to go. So I get this contract and I get a year to write it. And I'm like, I got this. I sit down at my computer in my apartment in San Francisco, turn on the computer, nothing. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, that's fine. Next day, nothing. So this is going on for a few weeks. I'm like, all right, maybe the apartment where we live is not the best place to write. So I try the library. Then I try all the branch libraries. Then I try the cafes, every single one that I can access by bus. Nothing is coming. And I mean, false starts, writing that felt weak and not my own. I was so frustrated. And by the way, I had a year to write this novel, and the clock is ticking, right? And now, we're about now 6 months in. And I start asking myself dangerous questions. And by that I mean start asking myself, do I know what a novel is? Do I know how to write one? Even though I had like about 5 on my computer that, had accumulated hundreds of rejections, but still. Am I a writer? What is a novel? I mean, I am going to some dark, dangerous places. Around this time, and I'm panicking, by the way, total panic mode. I don't know what to do. Around this time, I go out to go to dinner with a friend of mine named Adam, and he was raised in Rapid City, South Dakota. And, we're sitting at dinner. I'm half listening, right? Because I'm in my head trying to figure out what to do with this novel, how to get it out. And my friend Adam is sitting there talking about this piece of property that his mom and he have purchased and outside the Badlands of South Dakota. And, I'm kind of half listening and pounding whatever I'm drinking, if you know what I mean. And then he says, and we put a cabin on that land. I start pricking up. I'm like, oh, you put a cabin on there, huh? Never been to South Dakota, by the way, or anywhere near South Dakota. And he's like, yeah, we put a cabin on there. It's super isolated. And, Adam is saying, I don't have time to go stay out there. My mom is, older, so she can't really stay out there. And I'm trying to figure out who could just go out there and stay in that cabin. Give it a test run. Now I'm really perked up. And I said, Adam, I know exactly the person. And he's like, oh, who? And I said, me. And he looked at me and he's like, yeah, okay, maybe, yeah, that could work. How about a long weekend? Or maybe a week? I said, no, I want to stay there for 3 months, the whole summer. And he said, Shobha, I don't know. It's super isolated. There's no one around for miles. Nobody's. I said, no, stop. I have to. This is it. There's a light bulb on top of my head. I've got to go because I'm going to write this book there. I can feel it, Adam. And he says, well, fine. But be warned, it's very isolated and it's open prairie. I'm like, yeah, I've read Little House on the Prairie. I know all about it. I got it. So Adam says, okay, fine. I get on a plane, go to Rapid City, borrow an old pickup truck from his mom, drive out to the cabin, and indeed, it is absolutely the most isolated place I've ever been. It has a big row of windows, beautiful, it looks out onto the Badlands Wall, for those who've ever been to the Badlands National Park, miles away, beautiful wall of rock. The closest town is 2 miles away, and the population of that town is 47 people. Drink some water. So there's no internet, but I'm fine. Open up my computer, and here we go, off to the races. Okay, my third or fourth day in this cabin, I go outside, and I'm looking, remember, open prairie, nothing around. I'm looking toward the west where the Rockies are. And in that distant horizon, there's a bank of dark clouds. It's a perfect night to tell the story, by the way. And I mean, really, the darkest clouds I've ever seen, and they're tinged with green. And I'm standing there thinking, like, well, what are those clouds? Well, whatever they are, they'll probably just dissipate, they'll go away. These clouds moved faster than anything I have ever known in my life. They hit that cabin with a storm that was apocalyptic. They hit that cabin with 80-mile-an-hour winds, thunder, lightning that shook the earth beneath me, and the cabin itself was shaking violently, like somebody was shaking like a snow globe. I'm cowering in the corner, because I've never it's the primal childhood fear of thunderstorms, and I'm like, Mother Nature, she's gonna take me out tonight. Convinced. So the storm passes, I get up out of my corner, and I get on the phone with Adam. And I say, hey, listen, there's a storm that came in last night. I almost died. And he said, oh, that's just a prairie storm. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, oh, but it's an anomaly, right? And he said, no, you'll get them about once or twice a week. And I said, but why is the cabin shaking? And he's like, didn't I tell you? It's not anchored to the ground. It's just sitting on a tractor trailer bed. And I'm like, you're joking. And he's like, well, look, Shoba, look, if there's a storm that bad, what you need to do is get in the pickup, go to the barn a quarter of a mile away at the other end of the property, and that barn is anchored to the ground. So just go drive in there and sit in the barn. He said, but don't get out of the pickup. And I said, why not? And he said, well, because there's rattlesnakes. And I was like, you're joking. He's like, no. And I should tell you, if you get bitten by one, you're gonna have to drive yourself to the clinic 45 minutes away in Walls, South Dakota. And while you're getting to the clinic, make sure your heart rate doesn't go up, because that makes the venom go faster through your bloodstream. And I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to, okay, let me get this straight. There's rattlesnakes, and then there's like and he's like, pull out, Shoba, don't, just come home. And everybody was saying, come home. And I said, no, I have to finish this novel. And so I stayed. The transistor radio was my best friend, because I was listening to the weather reports. And every time there was a storm coming, I would brace for it. I would grab my laptop, and I would have the car keys, and I would wait, and I could see it. I could see them racing toward me. And if I felt in my blood that it was going to be bad, I'd go to the barn. And I'd lock the doors, and I'd sit in the pickup holding my laptop. And that's how I got through those 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, I was finished with Girls Burn Brighter. And done. Because I knew I couldn't leave till I finished it. So I was writing like faster than the wind that was hitting that cabin. And what's so funny to me is that sometimes I'll meet readers who've read the book, and they'll come up to me and they'll say, hey, I have a question. I'm like, what? How did you capture the fear that these girls were feeling? And I just smile. How long do you have? So anyway, I'm going to read a really quick section from the beginning of the novel. And the village that this novel takes place in, at least the first part of it, is based on my grandparents' village in South India. Called, I made up the name, it's called Indravalli. The most striking thing about the temple near the village of Indravalli was not readily apparent. No, one had to first climb the mountain and come close. One had to take a long, thoughtful look at the entrance, at the door. Not at its carved panels or its fine graining, but at how the door stood so brave and so luminous and so alone. How it seemed to stand strong and tall, as if still a tree. It was the wood lumbered from a grove of trees northwest of Indravalli. The grove was cultivated by an old woman, they said more than 100 years old, who was childless. She and her husband had been farmers, and when she'd come to understand that she would never have children, she'd started planting trees as a way to care for something, as a way to nurture something fragile and lovely. Her husband had surrounded the young saplings with thorny bushes to keep out wild animals. And it being a dry region, she'd had to carry water from many kilometers away to water them. Their grove now boasted hundreds of trees, all of them steady and swaying in the dry wind. A journalist from a local newspaper once went to interview the old woman. He arrived at tea time, and he and the old woman sat in the shade of one of the trees, its wide leaves rustling high above them. They sipped their tea soundlessly. Even the journalist, forgetting all of his questions, was overcome by the quiet green beauty of the place. He had heard of her childlessness and her recently dead husband, and so, to be delicate, he said, "They must keep you company, the trees." The old woman's gray eyes smiled, and she said, "Oh yes, I'm never lonely. I have hundreds of children." The journalist saw an opportunity. "So you see them as children?" "Don't you?" she said. There was silence. The journalist took a long, deep look into the grove of trees, their thick trunks, their strength despite drought and disease and insects and flood and famine, and yet shining with gold-green light, radiant even in the heat and heaviness of afternoon. "You're a fortunate woman," he said, "to have so many sons." The old woman looked up at him, her eyes on fire, her wrinkled face taking on the glow of her girlhood. "I am fortunate," she said, "but you're mistaken, young man. These aren't my sons, not one. These," she said, "are my daughters." Thank you.
All right, we are now moving on to the last reader of the evening. Peter Orner would like you, yes, you, to check the batteries on your fire alarms, both here in the valley and when you return from being at altitude. Convincing people to act on this life-altering advice is his specialty as a firefighter with the Norwich, Vermont Volunteer Fire Department, although he did recently fight a car fire on the interstate. In between fighting fires and offering great advice, Peter has authored 8 books. 3 short story collections, Esther Stories, The Last Car Over the Sagamore Bridge, and Maggie Brown and Others, and 2 books of essay/memoir, Am I Alone Here?, Notes on Reading to Live and Living to Read, and Still No Word From You, as well as 3 novels, The Second Coming of Mavala Shikongo, Love and Shame and Love, and most recently, The Gossip Columnist's Daughter, which was named a best book of 2025 by the New York Times. Am I Alone Here?, his essay collection, was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award. The New York Times has called him quote, a master of the short story. And the many accolades he has received include, but are not in any way limited to, a Guggenheim Fellowship, the California Book Award, the Goldberg Prize for Jewish Writing, and 4 Pushcart Prizes. Peter teaches at Dartmouth College and lives in Norwich, Vermont with his family, but he has also taught at the Warren Wilson MFA program for writers at Warren Wilson College, in the MFA program at San Francisco State University, and the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, as well as at other institutions. In addition, he has taught as a Fulbright Scholar at the University of Namibia and on the law faculty of Charles University in Prague. He has also served in the Bolinas Volunteer Fire Department. There's plenty that I could say about Peter's writing, but I'm pretty confident that Andre Dubus III's opinion is going to hold more water than mine. So here's what Andre has to say. Masterfully written, funny, often achingly moving, The Gossip Columnist's Daughter confronts us with at least 2 central questions. How much of our own daily fumblings in life are passed down to us, and how, precisely, does one learn to love and to be loved anyway? There's more here, too, of course, the seductive power of celebrity, the ties that should bind but do not, but I'll let you discover these on your own as you treat yourself to this truly unforgettable novel. If there is a more daring and original narrative voice in contemporary American fiction than Peter Orner's, then I don't know whose it is. Peter Orner.
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you, Arthur, and thank you very much. Public service announcement. I mean, do check the batteries on your smoke detectors. You'd be surprised how many people just don't read the fine print on the smoke detector. 15 years or 10 years and they're done. So replace them. I get this all the time. All right. I woke up this morning thinking about the Book of Laughter and Forgetting. July 12th, 2023. Milan Kundera died last night. The only thing I remember is the beginning. That's not a knock. How many books do we forget completely? Pages upon pages that once held our attention, maybe our emotions, and not a shred remains. The premier of the Czechoslovak Communist Party is giving a speech to a large throng of the party faithful. It's the anniversary of something or another. It's the dead of winter, and the premier, whatever his forgettable name was, is hatless. A devoted underling stands behind him. His name I do remember. Clementis. Here, boss, he says, take my hat. Clementis hands over his hat in order to protect the far more important head from getting a chill. In the official photograph that marked that occasion, a picture widely distributed to the public, the premier is wearing a hat while Clementis stands behind him, beaming, proudly bareheaded. A few years later, Clementis is tried, convicted, and shot for being an enemy of the state, spy for the West, traitorous dog, capitalist pig wallowing in shit. The photograph, of course, has to be corrected and redistributed. Clementis is edited out of history. Only his hat remains. I start deep in this novel, Gossip Columnist's Daughter, because this moment in Kundera's book always haunted me, and I was thinking about the ways in which people get airbrushed. Not necessarily officials, party officials, famous people, but what about the people that we airbrush from our own lives on a personal level? And that's really what this book is about. It's about a friendship between 2 couples, which fascinates me. It's really 4 friendships, right? You know, you have 1, 2, you know? And what happens when those kinds of friendships end? I don't think we think enough about that, so that's what I was trying to do here. We're outside Chicago back in 2019. Nursing home on Waukegan Road next to the old Sara Lee Cake Factory. The place is called Sunshine or Sunrise. I can't keep it straight. They shut down the plant years ago. All that's left are broken windows, smokestacks, and a vast parking lot. And yet the sugary reek of industrial cake still permeates these windows that are otherwise screwed shut. she stopped eating. One of my earliest memories is of Babs feeding me family cars. We're in what they call the day room. I dip a plastic spoon into a carton of Yoplait. Open wide for Lou's cherry red Continental coupe, doors as big as Rhode Island. Why are you shouting? Babs says. It all reverses. History repeats itself backward. With disgust, she accepts the spoonful. Again, I dip the spoon in the carton. Vroom, vroom, I say. It's your own 83 Seville, two-tone paint job and that weird hump of a trunk, you remember? Like you could stuff a body in it? Open, Babs, open. We're surrounded by strangers in wheelchairs haphazardly parked like bumper cars. It's mid-morning. Some doze, some slurp cold coffee, others stare at the wall. At a table in the corner, they're playing cards. Nobody around here is waiting to die. They're waiting on lunch, except Babs. For her, lunch can come and go and come and go. Next time I'm on my way here, I'll pick up canned peaches. She always had a thing for canned peaches. I'd take a canned peach over a peach. Lou always said that was the Depression talking, and for the same reason, he said I wouldn't touch a canned anything. Babs and Lou and Babs. We always called them by their first names. Eyes closed, her head droops. She's sitting in a plastic chair. She says she wouldn't be caught dead in a wheelchair, and I said, don't be so sure about that. She's become frail. Years she worried her mind would go before her body. A former professional dancer, she'd always taken such good care of her body, and now it's her mind's intact and her body so weak. Eyes still clamped, she says, and you know something? What? There's not a single soul here I like. What about Sylvia Weinstein? Did you two get over that thing? Weinberg, what thing? Didn't you have a tiff with Sylvia Weinstein? Don't you listen? But you like Sylvia, am I right? Sylvia's dead. Sylvia Weinstein's dead? Weinberg, when? 2 days ago, 2 months ago, what's it matter? I heap the spoon again. Open up for Sally's green gremlin. Sally's what? You don't remember Uncle Sally's green gremlin? It was like a Pinto, only worse. Huge man, itty-bitty car. Lucy said Uncle Sally didn't drive his car, he wore it. She opens her eyes. Your teeth are yellow, she says. It's the stress, I say. What? The discoloration. It's caused by stress. That's absurd, she says. I cram the spoon between my grandmother's lips. Couple more. What about Aunt Judy's VW Bug? Didn't she have a convertible Bug? Didn't she once drive all the way to Chicago from Seattle with the top down? She said it only rained on her in Nebraska. Babs bats the spoon out of my hand. Yogurt scatters across the parquet like white curdled blood. The card players look up briefly from their game. Her eyes lucid, furious. Don't talk about Judy, she says. I leave her and go into the men's room in the hallway. Bathroom in a nursing home. Disinfectant, that little red string you pull. We all end up here, one way or another. When I come back, she's looking out the window at the remains of the defunct plant. It's like a crematorium, she says. I stoop and wipe up the yogurt. Look, I just want you to eat a little more. Nurse Tabitha says you need more protein. Who are you anyway? She shields her eyes with her hand as if there's a glare. Babs. Oh, what difference does it make? You could be anybody. She leans forward and squints at my face as if she's suddenly taken interest in something else she sees in it. Jed? Yeah? Don't you have a wife? We never married. Where is she? Around. Around? What does that mean? It means she's around. Shouting distance. Just a little more, will you? I'm running out of cars. My own crap-ass Civics in the shop. Shouting distance, Babs says. I don't want to talk about it, I say. It's like you speak some other language. Please, Babs. Nurse she dropped you. I didn't say that. She gave you your walking papers. Those deep-set eyes and that nose, not so much big as prominent. First thing you noticed about her, fleshy, bulbous, direct. Babs always said she had her father's nose, a Hodash nose. Both my sister and I have it. Hannah and I are separated, I say, but nobody dropped anybody. I've got an apartment a few blocks away. It's a trial Trial is right. I know that, Hannah, without the H. It's just an alternative spelling, Babs. That's what you say. Isn't there a baby? We're co-parenting. What? Parenting alone together. I'm starting to feel woozy, she says. Times change, people adapt. You think I don't get it? She says. You think I don't know what it's like? What's like? To be dropped. It's in your eyes. Dropped. Right there in your sky blue eyes. Nobody in the family has such eyes. I've always found it suspicious on the part of your mother. Irises like Laura's, those don't just appear in a gene pool. She takes a look around the room, lowers her voice, and they've never been very Jewish looking. Babs. And you know what else she says? Tell me, but open up for Lucy's new Mini Cooper. She dropped us like old shoes. Who did? Who? She turns her face towards the saloon doors of the day room like she expects whoever she's talking about to saunter right through them. You're asking me who? Who, I say. Who? Who, she says. Everybody knows who. And who would take one whiff of this place and swish away to the Arts Club or the Union League Club or the Cliff Dwellers Club or the Alliance Francaise, even though that woman couldn't speak a word of French. Essie Kupsnit? My grandmother flinches. The name alone still jabs. Visit? Out here? Lower herself? And you know she hated the suburbs with a venom only she. Essie's dead, Babs. You think I don't know that? At least 15 years, I say. 17, she says. And she clenches her eyes as if she can't shut them tight enough. Out of sorrow, out of rage, it's hard to tell. And there it is, the old wound. Babs, she shakes her head. No more talking. And I remember thinking, not then, later, about the fact that she'd used the word us, dropped us like old shoes. Babs and Lou, the two of them had always led such entirely disconnected lives. I thought about my grandparents' separate twin beds, rock-hard mattresses. Jumping from one to the other was like jumping from concrete to concrete. Stub your toe if you landed the wrong way. Babs and Lou? No, not that us. Essie and Babs. Babs and Essie. The idea of them, the two once inseparable friends, two friends joined at the hip for decades. In their teens, Babs and Essie danced together around the city as chorus girls in shows and theaters and movie palaces like the Oriental, McVickers, the Illinois, the Chicago, the Selwyn, the Edgewater Beach Hotel. They high-kicked side by side at the Century of Progress in '33, maid of honor at each other's weddings, and their husbands too. Weren't they the buddiest of buddies? In the day room, the card players murmur, the sleepers sleep. When I finally stand and zip my jacket, Babs, eyes still closed, reaches up with her long fingers, claws my chin, and her voice like a claw too, clawing at the air between us. When Judy died, that bitch didn't send a card. That was a Tuesday. A week and a half later, she was gone. She was 101 and 4 months. Just 3 other sections. They're brief, don't worry. I know it's getting hot in here. I'm hot. When we were kids, Babs rarely laughed. We could tell from her face that she once had, as if she was laughed out. I'm losing her face. I stare at the old publicity photos, Babs posing before, I imagine, some lech gaping at her from under a black shroud. She's 16 or 17. In one, she balances on her left toe, her right leg raised high over her head. Both arms reach upward. Those legs, those arms, her hands, her beautiful hands, but her face, her Hodash nose, her big eyes. I stare at her, and I still can't see her. The Oriental, McVickers, the Illinois, the Chicago, the Selwyn, the Edgewater Beach. I repeat the names of the old theaters like prayers for the dead. She danced on those stages. After rehearsals, her feet would bleed, and she'd sleep standing up on the streetcar ride home. She had talent. Her sister, Miss Muriel Abbott, told her she had fluidity. You can't teach that. You can't teach water to be water. Miss Muriel once took her aside and said, "Leave. Go to New York. You're too short. but it might not matter. You'd get spotted out of any line. And after that, who knows? But as much as she bled for it, she never gave New York a first thought, much less a second. For many Chicagoans, and my grandmother was one of them, New York does not seduce. You cannot have two promised lands. Anyway, it was impossible. Go off and dance without Essie. If she didn't dance with Essie, she didn't dance. It was that simple. Plus, her mother wanted her to go to college. And yes, there was also the fact, more incidental but true, that she'd promised Lou Rosenthal she'd marry him. Mary? Mary? Miss Mariel Abbott had shouted, with legs like yours? So, anyway, a lot happens, including the families have kids, a boy and a girl, both families. And one of the daughter of Essie ends up, and this is a true story, she ends up being an actress in Hollywood. And in November of actress, she guest starred in a number of TV shows. She was just starting her career. She was 22 years old. And she was found dead in her apartment in West Hollywood a week after the Kennedy assassination in November of 1963. The case is still open. I've solved it in this book. If you want to tell the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department that I have, you can. It's true. But what the book is really about is about, again, friendships and what happens after. And after the death of the daughter, the friendship between the two women and the two men ends. And I'm just going back in time to before all that, though. The book really starts with the death. Some nights, though, Babs did get her own taste of glamour. Lou would stay home, sometimes, not very often. Babs would accompany Irv and Essie out on their rounds. And those were sparkling nights when Babs was one of the gang, careening drunkenly from the Buttery to Chez Paris to Al Siegel's living room to the Bistro to the London House for Jazz. A plebeian, seeing the entourage, would know it was Cup and Essie and Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh, but who's that other one? Couldn't possibly be a star, not with that nose. And once, Jane Mansfield stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and told Babs she liked her shoes. And Babs, in a moment of abandon and bravado, took off her shoes. And Babs and Jane Mansfield traded. They fit, were twins, right there in the slush on Wacker Drive. And even after the rift, the breakup, the schism, the alienation, whatever you want to call it, Babs would tell this story, though she would never say how it was that she happened to be walking down Wacker Drive with Jane Mansfield. No. It's not that Babs craved a return to any of that. It wasn't the secondhand connection to movie stars, to the anointed ones. It wasn't her sense of having missed out on her own possibilities in show business. She reconciled herself to that long ago. It was the quiet nights. Babs mourned the loss of those nights when the two of them would just sit with or without music, talk and a little laughter, nothing forced, nothing bombastic. And the lake out there in the dark that they couldn't see because of the light and their own reflections on the glass. I will stop there. And I just want to... I just want to thank Brett and Lisa and Sands and everybody who makes this possible. It starts from the top and it comes down the spirit of this place. And so I'm grateful to be here and thank you all for being here and see you later.
Please remember that the books of all of these wonderful authors are for sale out in the lobby. Also, this jacket was just found.